When Deus realizes that Murmur manipulated events to hasten Kigo's elimination, she claims she wants the game concluded before he has to retire and challenges him to a wager on the winner of the survival game, with her picking Yuno and Deus betting on Yuki. Meanwhile, Yuki and Yuno go on a stargazing trip, but Yuno alters their destination along the way. Worried about Yuki's safety, Aru contacts Nishijima and they manage to narrow Yuki and Yuno's location down to a rundown holiday resort, enlisting Hinata, Mao, and Kosaka to search for them. As they split up and search the abandoned hotels, Aru and Kosaka face various traps set by Yuno, while Hinata is tricked by a text message Yuno sent from Yuki's cell phone. When the others attempt to find Hinata, they get locked in a room which starts to fill up with gas. At the end of the episode, a dazed Yuki is shown bound to a chair, with an ecstatic Yuno sitting between two skulls in her underwear as she begins to feed him. Aru talks to Yuno through her surveillance feed, revealing he dug up 3 corpses from her garden, 2 of which had recently had their skulls removed. When he threatens to give this information to the police unless she releases them, the stress causes Yuno to alter her memory again, rendering negotiations moot. As Kosaka uses his cell phone to post his will in his blog, it is apparently turned into a future diary by the 8th future diary holder, who addresses him as an apprentice. Advised by Aru, Kosaka acts out his diary's predictions to crawl through a ceiling vent, reaching an amnesiac Yuno, a catatonic Yuki, and a bound Hinata in the control room. His appearance causes Yuki to recover, recalling how Yuno abducted him to keep him safe until July 28th. Yuno places the key to Yuki's shackles on the floor and tosses Kosaka the control panel key, allowing him to free Aru and Mao. Yuno then takes advantage of Kosaka's distraction and shoots at him with a crossbow. However, Yuki, having had his key kicked over to him by Hinata, frees himself and slaps Yuno across the face, stopping her and leaving her behind when his diary predicts the imminent arrival of 3 future diary holders, all apprentices of the 8th future diary holder. Deus informs Yuki that the 8th future diary holder has the ability to host and send predictions to the blogs of her apprentices via a server. When Yuki's diary predicts an attack by the 3 apprentices, Aru has him moved to Kosaka's mansion. His plan is to lure the apprentices in, then deactivate the area's cell phone tower, severing their connection to the server of the 8th future diary holder. Once the attack begins, however, Yuno appears and cuts the power to the tower remote control, wanting to defend Yuki by herself. Aru and Kosaka rush to deactivate the tower manually, while Yuki keeps Yuno in restraints. 2 of the apprentices, Marco Akusaba and AI Mikami, manage to corner Yuki and Yuno by the time Aru deactivates the tower. However, Marco and AI showcase their bona fide diaries, which have remained unaffected, revealing that they are both the 7th future diary holder. With no other choice, Yuki releases Yuno, who intimidates the couple into retreating. However, when the 3rd apprentice, Teru Eikuin Nanba, sets the mansion on fire, Marco and AI counterattack. Their ability to predict each other's actions manages to overwhelm Yuno, resulting in her and Yuki getting injured and their diaries taken away. As Yuki and his friends are brooding in the hospital, they are approached by Minine, who poses as a nurse. Aru deduces that Marco and AI have not destroyed Yuki and Yuno's diaries because they want to take advantage of the information they provide. In order to confuse them, he has Minine feed Yuki false information. Yuki's divorced father Kuru Amano visits him in the hospital, but while Yuki's away, he searches the room for his cell phone. Yuno overhears that he has promised to destroy it in return for the cancellation of his substantial debt and realizes he is being used by the 11th future diary holder. Marco, who has learned all about the situation from Yuki's diary, considers Kuru as a useful link to Minine and the 11th future diary holder and calls Yuno, demanding that they bring Kuru to an abandoned commercial tower. Once they arrive, Marco places Yuki and Yuno's cell phones on a table and attacks Kuru. As Yuki futilely fights Marco, his father goes over to the table and breaks his cell phone, yet nothing happens. Realizing that the cell phones were decoys, Yuno attacks AI and successfully retrieves both diaries. Just then, Teru sets off explosives, collapsing the floor under Yuki, and both Kuru and Yuno reach out to grab him. Meanwhile, Nishijima has uncovered the identity of 8th future diary holder as a children's caretaker named Kamadu Ueshida and goes to search her orphanage. In a flashback, Marco and AI are abandoned children who meet in the commercial tower, grow up in Kamado's orphanage, and eventually fall in love. In the present, Yuki chooses to take Yuno's hand, while Marco and AI run to the crumbling tower's roof with Yuki's father, intending to jump off with parachutes. Yuno catches up to them and once again tries to fight them alone, while Yuki hides and attempts to help her with his diary's predictions. Yuno loses and has her cell phone taken away, but it turns out to be Marco and AI's decoy, which distracts them with false predictions. As a result, Yuno manages to critically injure AI. Kuru grabs one of the 2 parachutes and escapes the tower, but he runs into to his ex-wife Rei, who has been informed of the situation by Nishijima. When she threatens to turn him in, he stabs her. Yuki, Yuno, and a dying AI are trapped in the wreckage, but Marco attempts to free AI despite having been mortally wounded himself. With Yuki and Yuno's help, the debris is cleared out and Marco and AI die together as the tower collapses. Meanwhile, Nishijima has been unable to find Kamido's Future Diaries server. Yuki and Yuno escape using the second parachute, only to find Rei has died. A year ago, Yuki was paired with Mo Wakaba, a classmate of his, to purchase supplies for an upcoming school festival, preparing to give her a love letter at the right moment. In the mall, Yuno, disguised in a bunny suit, made several attempts to prevent Yuki from doing so, since she was secretly in love with Yuki, but she is stopped by the security guards. When she returned home, Yuno was revealed to have murdered her parents Saika Gasai and Ushio Gasai, a pair of bankers who were revealed to abuse her when she failed to meet their standards. In the present, after Yuki asks Deus to bring his mother back to life, Deus reveals that he is dying and his powers have faded, explaining that all of existence will collapse unless a successor is determined soon. When Kuru comes home injured, Yuki demands him to turn himself in for killing Rei, although there is no actual evidence to comply. The next day, Yuki trails Kuru from a pawn shop to a local shrine hoping for evidence, but it turns out that Kuru wanted to visit the site where his family was going to go stargazing before he turned himself in. While reconciling with Yuki, Kuru is suddenly stabbed in the chest with a knife. Yuki is then ambushed by agents of the 11th Future Diary holder, yet he manages to fight back and kill the agents. After Yuno arrives to help him, Yuki declares that he is now determined to win the survival game in order to attain the power to resurrect his parents. When he tells Yuno this means he has to kill her, she calmly replies that she is ready to die for him at any time. John Box, the mayor of Sakurami City, convincingly passes a motion to have Kamido's orphanage shut down, and he later attends Deus's meeting, where Yuki exposes his identity as the 11th Future Diary holder, after much research about him 5 days earlier. Minin relays this news to Nishijima, who reveals his reassignment as one of Box's bodyguard and his discovery that Yuno was adopted. Yuno, theorizing that Box wants to seize Kamido's server, has Yuki form an alliance with Kamido to have her apprentices ambush Box while driving on a country road. However, Box uses a jammer to sever connections to Kamido's server. In anticipation of this, Yuki and Yuno betray Kamido and slaughter her defenseless apprentices, prompting Kamido to flee in Box's car while Yuki and Yuno give chase, eventually cornering them. Minin appears with Aru, who retrieves Yuno's umbilical cord from her orphanage, revealing that its DNA matches with the third corpse. This means that the real Yuno Gasai is dead, and the one Yuki has known all along is actually an imposter. Despite Aru's revelation, Yuki declares his trust in Yuno. Box connects Kamido's server to Holon, a supercomputer which holds user accounts of every citizen of the city, making them his apprentices. Minin tries to attack Box, but his diary lets him turn the tables. Nishijima, who has fallen in love with Minin, comes to her aid and destroys the supercomputer. However, it turns out to be only one part of the whole, and Box's plan is put into motion. As Aru sends Hinata, Mao and Kosaka to help Minin and Nishijima destroy the remaining parts of Holon, Minin figures out Box's diary can read the predictions of all other future diaries. Deus reveals to Minin that Box helped him design the future diaries, wishing to grant divine power to the human race. Minin, Nishijima, Hinata, Mao, and Kosaka storm Holon's location, overwriting their diary's predictions to confuse Box. In response, Box makes use of the diary of his secretary, Ruji Kurosaki, and manages to capture Hinata, Mao, and Kosaka, as well as injure Minin and kill Nishijima. Minin is saved by Yuki and Yuno, who have used her as bait to get to Box. Yuki and Yuno wreak havoc, demanding that Box release their friends and commit suicide by using his position as mayor against him. Box locks himself in a double-door bank vault in Gasai Bank, which can only be unlocked via retina scan by himself, Yuno's parents, or the real Yuno. Since Yuki can no longer eliminate Box for her, Minin starts hunting Yuki down, reminiscing how she lost her parents in the Middle East as a child and grew up under the constant threat of death. At the same time, Yuno frees Hinata, Mao, and Kosaka and goes to kill Kamido, but she is stopped by Aru. In a tense showdown, Minin gains a clear shot at Yuki but sees her child self standing beside him, letting Yuki shoot Minin in the torso. Minin then destroys her diary voluntarily in order to detonate a bomb triggered by her death, intending to destroy the vault for Yuki, yet the vault withstands the blast. Yuno arrives to send Yuki away to destroy Holon, and she somehow manages to open the vault and kill Box. A few days later, Aru expresses his distrust in Yuno to Kamido, Hinata, Mao, and Kosaka after he witnessed her opening the vault via retina scan despite being an imposter, while Yuki shows Yuno his list of the deceased Future Diary holders. Suddenly, dark vortexes appear all over the city due to Deus's lifespan decaying. While Murmur is panicking over the world ending sooner than expected, Kamadu appears with Aru, who asks Deus if Yuki could return the world back to normal if he was the successor. A shocked Aru attempts to inform Yuki of Deus's answer, but Deus stops Aru, revealing that Aru is an entity created by him to observe and record information on the survival game and its players. Deus starts disassembling Aru, promising to spare him if he proves he has done anything out of his own free will. But Aru succeeds when he reveals he had Kamadu make his cell phone into an apprentice detective diary, demonstrating his will to change the future and save Yuki. Yuno asks Yuki if he has the will to kill his friends if they end up betraying him. As they arrive at Aru's apartment to kill Kamadu, Yuno is held off by Aru while Yuki chases after Kamadu and his friends. When he runs into Hinata, he learns Deus told Aru the divine power bestowed to the winner of the survival game can bring bodies back from the dead, but not the soul. Meanwhile, Yuno stabs herself, since Aru countered all of her attacks. After Aru patches up Yuno's wound, he rushes to the scene. Yuno calls Yuki to prevent Aru from contacting him and tells him Aru tried to kill her and that he should not trust any of his friends. Out of rage and fear, Yuki ends up shooting Hinata, Mao, and Kosaka, still believing he can bring them back to life after he becomes a god. Aru finally arrives and warns Yuki that Yuno plans on killing him at the very end to win the game. When Yuno arrives, Aru kisses Yuki, enraging Yuno. Aru and Yuno commence fighting and Aru manages to smash her cell phone, but Yuno pulls out a second cell phone and slashes at Aru's throat. As Yuno kills Kamadu, a dying Aru, who knows the first diary he destroyed was real, suddenly has an epiphany about Yuno. Since he can no longer talk, he writes a message in his cell phone and shows it to Yuki, allowing Yuno to finish him off as Deus begins to collapse. Murmur proclaims herself as Deus's successor until his death and the end of the world on July 28th. Yuno reminds Yuki about her diary's prediction that they will become one on that day. As the days pass, Yuki eventually admits to himself that his friends were probably telling the truth, as he reminisces the events that took place in the city. Since he cannot understand why Yuno would lie to him about the possibility of resurrecting people, he decides to get the truth from her by fulfilling her diary's prediction one day earlier and makes love to her. He confronts her as to why she would lie to him, but she responds by saying she just wanted to console him and asks him to kill her. Yuki refuses and instead suggests that they die together. When he mentions Aru's message, which claimed that this is a second universe where Yuno has already become a goddess and has gone back in time, Yuno attacks him. As he runs away, Yuki is intercepted by Murmur, who shows him visions of the past, which confirms that Yuno has indeed played the survival game once before. In the first world, Yuki's alter ego and Yuno ended up as the last contestants and both agreed to commit a double suicide from overdosing rather than having to kill the other, but Yuno faked her death, thinking she could bring Yuki back as a goddess. When she discovered in real life she could not restore souls, Yuno traveled back in time and killed her other self, taking her place in this second world. Distraught at this, Yuki breaks out of the visions and confronts the first world Yuno. As the Cathedral of Causality raises, Yuno expresses her disgust at how this state of affairs prevents her and Yuki from ever surviving together. She states that since Yuki will not kill her, she will kill him and travel back in time again to meet another Yuki. Murmur shoves Yuki off a cliff, but he is saved by the sudden reappearance of Mainin, who displays powers similar to that of Murmur. As Murmur and Yuno travel 2 years back in time to a third world, Mainin and Yuki follow them. Mainin explains to Yuki that when Deus realized Murmur was favoring Yuno, he suspected them of being from another timeline. In order to ensure the fair running of the game, he imparted Mainin with part of his power, although she did not know so at the time. Knowing that Yuno intends to kill her past self in this world as well, Yuki rushes to her house with Mainin. When Yuki finds third world Yuno abused and locked in a cage, choking on a mat she tried to eat, he calls for an ambulance, despite Mainin's warnings about interfering with the past. As Yuno and Murmur arrive with the third world Rei and Kuru hostage, Mainin and Yuki flee with third world Yuno in tow, while Mainin lectures Yuki that the parents in the third world are not his. An ambulance arrives at Yuno's house together with the third world Ushio. Although he is a much more caring man in this world, ready to act upon confirmation that his wife is abusing Yuno, Yuno has to stab him when he starts getting suspicious of her. Minin drops off Yuki and third world Yuno at the school and makes a phone call to the third world Kigo, forewarning him about his son's illness. Yuki evades Yuno and Murmur's attacks, trying to convince Yuno to return to the second world and rule as its goddess. However, Yuno, torn between her feelings for Yuki and the inevitability of the second world's destruction unless one of them dies, decides to trap him in an illusionary ideal world where his parents are alive and she has never existed. Minin returns and fights Murmur, but she is overwhelmed once Yuno releases a seal on Murmur's powers. In the illusionary world, Yuki soon realizes he fell in love with Yuno because she was his life supporter. Kigo and Nishijima head for the explosion scene. With Minin beaten, Yuno approaches her other self. After some hesitation at seeing the innocence of her third world self, Yuno lunges at her, but she is stopped by her third world parents. As the police arrived, Kigo confronts Yuno, and Nishijima rescues Minin. Meanwhile, the actions of Yuki and Minin have caused a positive domino effect that changed the future of every Future Diary holder. When Box's incomplete diary reads the results in Yuki's diary, he calls off his partnership with Deus, canceling the survival game and must find another method to determine his successor. Yuki manages to remember Yuno and break free from the illusionary world, while releasing the second world Murmur, who had been trapped by her first world self in order to impersonate her. Faced with Yuki's love and her third world self's united family, Yuno's resolve to kill them all is lost, and she decides to commit suicide. A horrified Yuki is declared winner of the survival game by the second world Murmur and is spirited away through a vortex. In the third world, almost all Future Diary holders are enjoying their new and peaceful lives. Yuno's relationship with her parents improves, and she gets many friends, though feels she is forgetting something. As 10,000 years passed in the second world, Yuki is still grieving Yuno's death in his now empty universe, refusing to create anything as its god. Murmur tried tirelessly to comfort him, but to no avail, since he just keeps staring at the last entry of his cell phone. However, the last entry changes and indicates that Yuno is somehow still alive. Don't forget to write comments because you can be in the next video. Right, I want to be in the video and you will definitely get in. Thanks for watching.